So the first video dealt a little bit with destruction and creation, kind of in a historical context, maybe talking about the buildings and those sorts of things. But it's not just the house in this story, I think, that is being destroyed, and possibly with the option of being reborn in a way. Let's think about the sort of hierarchy of the gang, right? The society of the gang. At the beginning of the story, who is in charge of the gang? It's Blackie, right? But then Trevor, or T, because apparently Trevor is a silly name for a reason I can't really understand, T goes into Old Misery, checks out the house, and comes back with his plan, right? So even though the gang had voted to do this one thing, T puts it up to a vote again, and they all decide they're going to go mess up Old Misery's house, right? So at that point, Blackie sort of loses his leadership role. His leadership role is destroyed. And then T assumes authority. He becomes the leader. But what happens later in the story? Well, on page 120, T is trying to figure out what's going to happen. They're talking about Old Misery possibly coming back. Just give me a minute and I'll fix it. I swear I'll fix it. So T's getting a little bit panicked. His authority had gone with his ambiguity. He was only one of the gang. So at the beginning of the story, Blackie's in charge. Then T has this idea, and T becomes in charge. And then when T gets stumped, he sort of falls away from the leadership role, and Blackie sort of reascends in a way. So later on page 120, around, it looks like paragraph 129, Blackie, he was a leader again. So Blackie's leadership at the beginning of the story is destroyed. T ascends, but then T's leadership is destroyed, and Blackie becomes the leader again. Although at the end of the story, even the leadership doesn't seem to be quite as authoritative as it used to be, right? At the beginning of section 4 on page, this looks like 122, second sentence of section 4, the question of leadership no longer concerned the gang. So we had Blackie, then T, then Blackie again, and now really the question of who's in charge doesn't matter. At the end of the story, I think T and Blackie are both working sort of on equal levels and trying to solve this problem of destruction and how they're going to pull it off. So the only thing being destroyed is not just the house, and there's maybe the possibility of the house being rebuilt, but there's also the destruction of Blackie's leadership allows him to reascend later in the story, and I think that's really interesting.